I'd like to introduce our next presenters, John Jackson and Julie Zent from Ratio Architecture. Hello. It's like as if magic. You're coming out. Their presentation is, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my slide. It's right on the top. There we go. Bringing the Drama, the story of Taggart Memorial Amphitheatre at Riverside Regional Park. Please give them a warm round of applause.
We'll dive right into it. Thanks so much, all of you, for coming and attending this session. There may not have been any other options, is that right? Thank you so much for having us. My name is John Jackson. I'm a landscape architect and park planner with Ratio Architects here in town, and lead the firm's Parks and Recreation practice. I'm joined by Julie Zent, who is an architect and a preservation specialist. And the two of us worked on this project that we're going to share with you. It's something that we really enjoyed and that meant a lot to us. But what we're bringing to you today is the story of the Taggart Memorial Amphitheatre at Riverside Regional Park. And so we're going to talk to you a little bit about the amphitheater project for sure, but then we also need to tell you a little bit about the Riverside Regional Park master plan, which really set the stage for the project, for the amphitheater project. In a nutshell, what the project is about is the renovation of an amphitheater, a renovation of a monument that was dedicated to a mayor of Indianapolis in 1932. And we'll tell you about why that was. And in addition to renovating this monument, we developed a performance venue to give it sort of a new life. So that's what we're here to talk about. So I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes just chatting a little bit about the context within which we did this. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, so if you're not familiar with Riverside Regional Park, you may not know Indianapolis very well, you can maybe tell from where you're sitting. This is an aerial photograph of Indianapolis. You can kind of make out perhaps the urban core of the city. The red box there is Riverside Regional Park, so it's about 10 minutes away from downtown. Dropping down a few thousand more feet, this will just give you a sense of sort of the urban context, the urban fabric around the park. It's an 862-acre park. And we learned once we got going on the master plan that we developed for this park, that's actually about 20 acres larger than Central Park in New York City. And boy, were we thrilled to find that. As it just sort of energized us and it made us realize, man, we've really got something here. We really should, make this special and really return it to the jewel that it once was. Dropping down a few thousand more feet still, and now we've rotated north to the right just to fit this on the slide. You'll see that red circle indicates where our project is located within the park. One of the reasons that is significant is that George Kessler, who we'll talk about more in just a moment, identified that location as the primary entry into this park when he initially developed a concept for it. So it's a great place of honor, if you will. That location terminates Birdsell Parkway, which was part of the park and boulevard system of the city. So we'll drop down even further. It's like we're falling out of a plane here, we're getting close to the ground. But that oval or ellipse shape shows generally where the extent of this project is. And when I say project in this sense, I'm talking about the amphitheater and the monument. Maybe you can make out from where you're sitting, the monument is about a third of the way up from the bottom of that oval, and you can see it was sort of sitting in a green space. This is before the project was completed. Okay. So we should talk a little bit about some of the people who were involved in the creation of Riverside Regional Park. It really had something to do with the monument itself. On the far left, George Kessler. I imagine many of you in the room, if not all of you, are at least familiar with George Kessler, but he did a lot of work all over the country, helping cities plan their park and boulevard systems, and he did that here. He also developed a conceptual plan for the park itself. J. Clyde Power was the superintendent of parks at the time and helped implement a lot of George Kessler's ideas. And then Thomas Taggart was the person who was the mayor of Indianapolis at the time when the park system in Indianapolis was significantly expanded. So he's considered the father of the park and boulevard system in Indianapolis. It was a passion of his, and were it not for him, we wouldn't have what we have today. This is the plan that George Kessler developed for Riverside Park in 1913, and it's a beautiful drawing, and it's a great vision. Not a whole lot of it got implemented, and we can talk about why that is later if we have time, but one of the things that did get established is this gateway into the park, that again is right here, and that's Birdsall Parkway. So he set up that as the primary entry into the park, so it's a very important place, and that's where our project exists. If you're not familiar with this is Kessler's Park and Boulevard plan from 1909, I believe. Yeah. And we only share this with you. Won't go into great detail about it, but we share it with you because you can just appreciate the significance that Riverside Regional Park played in the development of that plan. It's the big green space in the upper left. It was the crown jewel of the system. It was the anchor to the whole system. And on any given weekend, you'd have thousands of people in Indianapolis hopping on trolley cars and going all the way out to Riverside Regional Park to spend the day and recreate. Another important person in this story is Lawrence Sheridan. So Sheridan was a landscape architect practicing at the beginning of the 20th century. Younger than Kessler, he was a bit of a protege of Kessler's, and he implemented, developed a lot of the concepts that Kessler came up with. And so Sheridan's hands are on an awful lot of different landscapes in Indianapolis. This is the plan that he developed for the memorial setting. Old drawing, I know it's maybe a little bit difficult to read, but to the right is Birdsall Parkway coming into the park, and you can see perhaps the monument kind of sitting here at the bottom of this triangular shape. On the right side of the monument, Sheridan developed a water feature, a mechanical water feature. And then on the left side or the west side of the monument, he developed this idea for a reflective pool. And then you could probably just make out, that it's a very informal landscape. It's sort of a romantic, pastoral kind of landscape, a little bit like what Jens Jensen might have come up with, perhaps. Not formal. The next slide shows his planting plan, which I know you can't make out much of from here, but perhaps you can just sort of squint your eyes and get a sense of the level of detail that he was going through. It was a horticulturally intense place for at least a period of time, and again, a very sort of pastoral, romantic landscape. And it looked like this. It was a beautiful place for a period of time. So much so that it warranted being included in Indianapolis' collection of postcards from, I would guess this might have been about 1938, 39 or something like that. So you can, and it is a photograph, it looks like an illustration, but it's a hand-colored photograph, so you can appreciate what he was trying to do, almost treating the monument to Taggart as a quality of the landscape. Sadly, that landscape didn't exist all that long. Probably within 10 years, the pond on the west side had been filled in, the water feature on the east side had been turned off, and much like today, and Indianapolis is no different than any other community in the country, we're having trouble taking care of the landscapes that we've designed, as I'm sure all of you can appreciate. There just wasn't money or person power to take care of these things. And so the landscape pretty quickly began to transition into something that was a lot easier to maintain. By the time we got to 2017, when we did the master plan for the park, this was the state that the monument was in, sadly. It was literally falling apart. There was a fence put up around it so that no one would get hurt. And during our public engagement process, we had people at every meeting and every stakeholder interview coming up to us and saying, could you please do something about the monument? If we don't do anything else, can we fix the monument? But a lot of people said, not only that, can we give it a purpose? Can we renew its life? Can we make it significant for the 21st century? And so that's in many ways what this amphitheater project was about, not just restoring this, but sort of returning a purpose to it. It's worth mentioning that the neighborhood is iconic in and of itself. This material that you're seeing on the screen showing up in a number of these images, glacial till fieldstone, is part of the identity of the Riverside neighborhood. And we show it because it was one of the things that we drew upon during the master plan for inspiration. And it shows up in the materiality of the amphitheater, but it's also something that we advise and prescribe to be used throughout the park to begin to create a cohesive identity. And Julie, you could flip through these like maybe every 2 seconds or something like that, but I'm not going to talk specifically to these images so much as use them to illustrate the fact that the master plan for Riverside Regional Park enjoyed the most robust public engagement process to date for a park in Indianapolis. And I think it's probably going to be that way for some time to come. Very significant investment was made in engaging the public. And it's served now as a template for sort of how these things are done locally as other teams have pursued plans for other parks. From a website, a project studio that was there in the park the entire year that we did the plan, lots of stakeholder interviews, a survey, just pop-up workshops. We had 3 open houses, really strongly attended. Lots of engagement from youth. That was a big component of the park, knowing that or the process, knowing they're the future. And at one point, I even found myself, and we took our steering committees up to Chicago to just sort of look at how do world-class cities take care of their public spaces, how do they manage and maintain them, and advocate for them. Youth engagement. And then finally, I found myself on the radio at one point with Linda Broadfoot, who's the director of Indy Parks at the time, just trying to get the word out about what a significant opportunity this was. We did end up with a master plan that if you all come to our office later for a social hour at 4 o'clock, you can see this plan. But the next slide shows sort of the comprehensive nature of it. Time doesn't really permit us from getting into the details, but the next slide does show sort of the heart of the park that we call the town center, and the amphitheater is located here. You can't read it from where you're sitting, so it's really part of this more intensive collection of uses. And the final slide is, at least for my initial portion here, is the vision that we cast at the end of the master plan for how we felt like this thing could maybe start to relate to the river, and really we thought of it as giving the park a heart transplant in many ways. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Julie. She'll talk a little bit more about some of the specific preservation facets of the project.
Okay. I'm going to start back on this slide because it's my favorite. Yes, I'd like to share some of the design aspects and challenges of the restoration of the Thomas Taggart Memorial. It's an architectural and landscape gem in Indianapolis. We'll go here. The Thomas Taggart Memorial owes much of its inspiration to the City Beautiful movement. It was a nationwide movement that merged art, politics, and architecture. From 1890 to 1930, Indianapolis saw a surge of neoclassical monuments and memorials honoring both political leaders and just ordinary citizens. Examples include the Soldiers and Sailors Monument and the World War Memorial. The ethos of this movement was to uplift citizens through grand public spaces. And if you have an opportunity, I would invite you to walk through the American Legion Mall downtown. It's a wonderful example of historic landscape architecture in an urban setting. Don't confuse it with the Circle Center Mall. It's a shopping center that's under renovation and a little depressing right now. The fun places you get to go when you're in preservation. This is myself and the preservation studio on top of the World War Memorial. All right, let's talk about the decline and revitalization. Constructed in 1930, continuous flooding led to a levee being built on the river, and this obstructed the views from the monument to the river. In 1940, as John mentioned, the basin and the fountain were filled in. In 1994, the development of the Riverside Recreation and Aquatic Center significantly altered the site layout. Neglect, vandalism, and lack of maintenance left the memorial in disrepair by the 2000s. And in 2005, the city of Indianapolis took some initiative and commissioned a group, including me, to produce an evaluation of the structure and the surrounding site. While we produced documents, the restoration never occurred due to lack of funding. In 2011, Indiana Landmarks, you probably heard from Suzanne Stannis yesterday, created a task force with the goal of preserving the memorial and also included it on its 10 most endangered list. And in 2018, Strengthening Indianapolis Through Arts and Cultural Innovation, a Lilly Endowment, was procured by Indiana Landmarks and Indy Shakes. And this led to the reuse of the memorial as a neoclassical backdrop for a multi-purpose outdoor theater. We completed the renovation in 2021, and it was listed as one of the top new venues that will rock Indianapolis. All right, so let's talk about some of our design challenges. Accessibility. If you remember, I spoke about the monuments symbolically uplifting the public. Well, they also achieve this literally by raising structures above grade, in our case, via 2 sets of stairs. Accessibility was not a priority when this was constructed. The main platform sits approximately 36 inches above grade, with the colonnade raised an additional 6 inches. To ensure an inclusive experience, we integrated a 36-foot ramp complete with 3 landings without compromising the aesthetic of the memorial. So we had the fortunate capability of locating this behind the balustrade, and through happenstance, that ramp just ended up center on the memorial, which provided a better entry point than the 2 stairs that were existing. So, let's see. And then to get to the colonnade level, we added a second small ramp, also centered on the memorial. And this sort of embraces my preservation mantra of make it look intentional. Okay, our next challenge was illumination. The memorial never had a lighting system, but for stage performances, lighting is essential. It creates a mood, directs your focus, and shapes your experience. Our goal was to enhance the space without overpowering it. To achieve this, we introduced 2 tiers of lighting, shown at these locations. Our first set, we placed uplights at the top of the paired columns inside the colonnade. This illumination creates striking shadows, transforming the memorial's presence. The fixtures themselves were screened with a metal shroud so that they could not be seen. The second set of lights required experimentation to determine their location. Ultimately, positioning them just below the paired columns proved most effective. It accentuates the architectural details while avoiding foot traffic. We integrated these fixtures within that 6-inch step. We opted for LED lighting, which allows for powerful color options in a state-of-the-art adaptable system. Okay. And the third challenge I'll talk about was incorporating new architectural elements into this historic memorial. The Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation tells us that the new additions should preserve the historic materials, remain visually compatible, not confuse the timeline, and if removed, leave the memorial's integrity intact. Fortunately, the west elevation was compromised. Most of the balustrade had been destroyed. Many of the plinth panels were removed. So we incorporated a new stage beneath the memorial at this location. I should have stayed there. We also, 2 new buildings flank the memorial and are set at an angle. They still relate to the original structure through vertical limestone paneling and incorporating something from the neighborhood's vocabulary with the fieldstone. To respect the memorial's geometry, we carefully position new elements in a balanced manner while keeping their height low as possible to preserve sight lines. The seating bowl, unlike the memorial's formal geometry, embraces a more fluid curved footprint, yet maintains bilateral symmetry, ensuring harmony with the two spaces. All right. The memorial stands as a testament to time when civic pride and public spaces were deeply intertwined. It highlights the legacy of leaders like Thomas Taggart, who believed in the power of parks to unite the community. With this new use, we once again have the power to unite the community while honoring the past. Thank you for coming today, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to entertain them.
I was wondering if you, I see the little semicircle on the entry side. I was wondering if you'd reintroduce the water feature on that.
It's a good question. We talked a lot about it, and ultimately the budget didn't support it. This was a $9.2 million project, by the way. That's what it took to get this done. What we did was we essentially treated that basin as a planter. But we also detailed it so that if the city does have, the ability to come back and do that at some point, or the Parks Alliance, who was one of the partners in this whole endeavor, could perhaps come back and make that happen. It's all set up. It could be repurposed that way, but yeah, the budget can support it. Yeah.
I'm curious about the road near there
Yeah.
in terms of like acoustics, and is the road shut down when there's events?
Yeah.
Would you, I don't know if there's plans to shrub along the vegetative barriers. I'm just, the road seems so close to the monument that I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, another good question. So, acoustics was something that we spent quite a bit of time on, actually. We hired an organization called Threshold out of Chicago. They did the acoustic design for Millennium Park up there, that venue. So they know of what they speak and hear, I suppose. So they did a lot of testing and modeling and things like that. There's about a 75-minute version of this presentation where we talk about some of that stuff. But your question is relative to the road and sort of like how far is sound traveling and so forth. That road is, it's a drive within the park. So it doesn't have like just tons of traffic on it. So like if your question was related to if I'm sitting there listening to a performance, am I hearing traffic sounds? If I interpret it correctly.
Sure, yeah.
And there's not enough traffic on that road for that to matter. However, one of the things we were worried about was, are we going to be disturbing the neighborhood? And so we did a lot of decibel measuring and things like that from different places. And while you can hear something going on in the neighborhood, it's not significant enough. We've never heard that anyone has complained about it. In fact, I think they think it's kind of exciting, to have the park activated. One of the issues is that this is on the flight path to the airport. And so if you go out here, you can stand there for 5 minutes and you'll probably hear 3 planes flying over it. We were worried about that too, but what we just did was made sure that the design of the sound system was sufficient enough that spoken word presentations even could be heard from the back row of the venue, and that was something that Threshold helped us out with. So long answer to your question, that's a good one. Yes, sir.
For each of you, favorite performance that you've seen there?
Great question. Well, I will tell you, one of the reasons this thing came to life was because we have a partner in the Indianapolis Shakespeare Company. They're called Indy Shakes, if you're not from around here. And so this is their sort of home. They're the artists in residence, if you will. And they have, I want to say it's 3 or 4 weekends in July, they present a play. And there was one a couple of years ago. It was their version of Richard III, which they called Ricky III. It's always a very contemporary take on Shakespeare, if you know this guy. And I just loved that. And it was fun for me as someone who was involved in the project to literally sit in the back row and just listen to one performer just speaking very quietly, to hear every single word. That is very much like design. So That's my answer. What about
Well,
you?
yeah, I think Shakespeare in the Park, I grew up watching Shakespeare in the Park, so it was exciting for them finally to have a home. And I think my favorite is the first performance that they had, where we had the team present, and yes, we sat in the very back with the bad kids, and just sort of observed all the people enjoying the space, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So you really documented the public engagement process. And I was just wondering, I work on commemoration and things of memorialization, and sometimes these are gems, but they fall into, like, there's a generational memory that falls out of sequence, let's say. And so I was just really impressed with the amount of engagement. And so can you talk about what factors you think led to that interest within the site, and then the response of the work afterwards. So,
Yeah, okay. These are so good. I just love these questions. I've presented this before and everybody just sits there, so. So there is quite a story behind public engagement, and I'll try to make it brief, but generally speaking, Riverside Park is a place that has received a lot of scrutiny over the years in a lot of different ways, a lot of starts and stops and plans and the things that don't happen. By the time 2017 rolled around, the public's trust that anything real was ever going to come about was pretty eroded. There had been talk at one point also about selling portions, releasing portions of the park, with a good intention to try to raise some revenue to take care of the park. But the community did not like that at all. So we walked into the master plan with just people being very, very suspicious of our intentions. I mentioned that radio show. A caller called in while we were on that radio and said, these people are all lying. It's not true. They're getting ready to sell off huge portions of the park. You just had to sit there and say, well, it isn't true. I don't know what else to tell you. So I think that's what led to such a robust process. And because the process was so comprehensive and robust, by the end of the process, it just sort of sailed through all the regulatory approvals because people came up and spoke at the final park board meeting where we heard this, and person after person after person saying, we've got to do this, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. And I think you guys are touring this on Saturday. One of the things you're going to see is an adventure park that's being built in the location of the former golf course. And I mention that because that's another example of, a lot of people were coming up to us and saying, why are there 3 golf courses in this park? There were 3 golf courses in the park. They were beautiful places, but that's 150 acres for a certain number of people to use for a period of time. Maybe go there. We heard resoundingly throughout the process, please get rid of at least one of them. And we ended up getting rid of 2 of them, or there will be 2 gone by the end of it. So it's returning the park to the anyways. I think that's why a lot of people thought, oh, okay, they're serious. This is really going to happen. And they could have been happy with it.
It had a snowball effect because you said that, what is the park called?
The adventure
The
park.
adventure park is
Yeah.
going on now, but there's also a trail that's occurring now.
Yeah.
And so after the success of this one, it led the community to believe that future things could really happen in their park and could be transformative.
beautiful work. Thank you.
Yes.
In your original, as you outlined on the original, I don't know the park, the original layout was just this very central entry access to the water.
Yeah.
Whatever, and you explained that you needed to build a kind of bump of water. But when looking at this image, it just appears that the axis is now screened off from the water by the trees. And it seems like there to be a viewing point or something. I just wondered if you had anything to share on that, why that is done, or is that something?
Yeah. Long story, great question. Also, long story behind it. Well, I'll try to make it quick because I know we have to wrap up. Julie mentioned this, but in 1913, the river flooded the city of Indianapolis. It was, if you don't know, today it would have been billions of dollars of damage, probably with significant loss of life. That was just as Kessler developed the concept for the park. And he had included a lot of alternative stormwater management ideas of lagoons and things like that. The city flooded. The city said, okay, that's it. We're not messing around. We're building the levee. We're not building these lagoons. And so what you're looking at is the levee that was built there. Our vision for this included basically, if you can imagine, sort of bending that levee around this side of the monument. So it's still there, but you get a more direct physical and visual connection to the river. We proved it as possible with the grading plan and things like that, and had a cost identified for it. But it was just too much money. It was beyond the $9.2 million budget we had available. So someday, we hope that that connection can be
But
created.
you could build it as a plaza thing, back on the river there. Steps and just
Yeah.
use the pin up down the river.
Belvedere or something like that.
Next, yeah, something like that.
Maybe that, yeah, that might be more cost effective way to do it.
All right, we have time for one more question.
You emphasized several times Riverside Regional Park. What makes it a regional park? Does that relate to the financing or governance?
It's basically just the scale of the park, its impact, how transformative it is, and recognize the fact that people are coming to the park from Carmel and Noblesville and Westfield and Zionsville and Greenwood. It's a place that draws people from far away.
But there's no regional entity.
Oh, correct. It's an Indy Parks facility. Maybe, I might have this wrong, so don't quote me, but I think there are 2 regional parks, Eagle Creek Park and Riverside. Maybe Grassy Creek Park is a regional park. But anyway, it's just a term used to denote its significance within the system and its reach.
We have another round of applause.